Good to see you. Thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I just realized, where are my marshmallows?
Come on, Dave. You said you would bring them. It's a fireside chat.
You're right. You're right. Ah, I should
We'll
probably bring
forgive
some colder
you.
clothes too, so I don't go home stinking like fire smoke.
Benefit of virtual meetings.
Yeah,
Exactly.
sounds good.
Yeah,
Well,
so
thank
thanks for
you.
joining for us. This is obviously we started up this fireside chat as just really an opportunity for, various people within the industry to like share their experience, tell their stories. We've been working with you for just over a year now, and your journey has been an absolute riot. From a lot of levels, right? We started out at the beginning of it, with a lot of the financial kind of analysis stuff, price rebranding or pricing. We went into some like marketing, communication efforts, zoomed into the summer. Things started off real well. Things were humming. You had a fire at your local, um, where your outpost is. And we were staring down the barrel of you losing like 60% of your volume. And it was like all hands on deck, throw down, do everything we could do to not make that a challenge for you, from contingency planning, setting a structure around, hey, we know things are stressful. We know things are scary right now. Here's the green, red, and yellow on how we want to segregate your clients, the communication for each of them, all the way through to new product innovation. And then at the end of it, you had an absolutely banner year on sales. And because of all that growth, you now are staring down the barrel of another big year. So eventually we'll get to that. I'd love to kind of hear what you have going on. I know Corey has some other like precursor questions just to like get to know Dave. Where'd you start from? What's your pre-four season guide story and kind of like how'd you get into it? So Corey, I'll hand it over to you.
Oh, I was going to say, give us your minute long elevator pitch of who you are and who Four Season Guides is, if you could.
Yeah, Four Season Guides. We are a hiking and backpacking outfitter based in Flagstaff, Arizona. Certainly, the heart of the business lives in Grand Canyon, and over the years we've grown from Grand Canyon, but we're a real small company with a tight knit group of folks that have been around, year after year. The same staff comes back all the time. And we're passionate about wild places, and we're really passionate about the value that you get from spending, especially extended periods of time in wild places. All of us, all of the guides, and management staff now, really came into this by having those personal experiences in the outdoors, going on backpacking trips, having that sense of discovery. We live in a world where I think there are limited opportunities for that sense of like real discovery. And a place like Grand Canyon, lends itself so well to that because you can go into places where and just feel like nobody's been here before. And we all feel how monumental that has been, in kind of shaping us as who we are as humans, and just making us feel like well-rounded people. And it's so valuable, and the opportunity to share that experience with people that want to join us is it's what drives us. It's what we love to do, and it is what we do. The company's been around since 1999. I wasn't the founder. Brian Tracy was our founder back in the day, and I mean, he comes from this. We're all cut from the same cloth. I started working for the company in 2005, and as a guide, and did about 8 seasons full time guiding, mostly Grand Canyon, and started to transition into a management position. And pretty quickly that turned into, do you want to buy the business? He had an opportunity to go off and do something completely different, a new chapter in his life. I was in a stage in my life where it's like, yes, this is, it was serendipitous. It just kind of fell into my lap. And while I was somewhat terrified at the prospect of becoming a business owner, having no concept of what, running a business actually means. I just took the leap. I just jumped in and said, we're going to do this. And here I am. Now that was 2013. So yeah, 13 years later.
Mhm.
Lucky 13.
Yeah, lots of lessons. And yeah, it's been a ride.
So what were some of those growing pains, that were unforeseen between that time period of when you stepped into ownership and, up until a year ago when we started working with each other?
There's a lot. I mean, it was such a huge transition for me personally. I lived a life for a number of years as a seasonal guide, and most of us as guides, we kind of had like we worked real hard in the spring season. There was a little break in the summer because we work in Grand Canyon in the Southwest where it gets real hot. And then a big fall season. And the winter was kind of like go and have fun, spend your money. We were a bunch of folks that, we didn't have kids. We didn't have anything tying us down. We didn't have like real responsibilities. And so, it was a really great lifestyle for somebody in their, mid 20s and early 30s, no kids and whatnot. Your job is taking people on, outdoor vacations. So transitioning from that into a whole new life, which was now I own the business and now I'm primarily in the office, doing the dirty work, so to speak. And also, just that being so consuming. And granted, in those early years, like I was fired up, I was gung ho, you know, I didn't have anything else holding me back. Is I could put in those 12 and 14-hour days and like feel good about it.
Mhm.
Um, Now that only lasts for so long, right? You can only burn the candle at both ends for so long, and so and then, I also met my partner, and then we become homeowners, and then we become parents. So, within about a 3-year period, there was a lot of life change that happened compared to, the guiding life before that. So, um, early on in the business days, it was, what I think a lot of small business owners experience is I'm doing everything. Like, and we were a really small company. We still are a really small company, but in the early days, it was me answering the phones. It was me responding to emails. It was me making sure that we were insured. It was me making sure we had all the operating permits, all the backcountry permits for our trip, making all the other reservations to make the trips happen, scheduling, vehicles, you name it. Like, if you can pick one aspect of running a business, it was all me. The guides showed up to run trips, and that was kind of that. And, certainly a great way to get to know the business. Um, Also, I guess, a little bit different for me than maybe some other business owners is I didn't start the business. So, I jumped into a train that was already heading down the tracks, and basically had to figure out how to operate it with minimal assistance. But yeah, it was exciting. And then honestly, probably about 3 years or so into it, granted, like, we're new parents at this point, and running the business and homeowners. And it was like, oh my God, this is like incredibly stressful and incredibly overwhelming. And what the hell have I done? Kind of experience. And yeah, I definitely had thoughts, probably 4 or 5 years after buying the business. I was like, I think I want out. And a lot of that was just because I did do everything, and I wasn't making smart decisions about, one, surrounding myself with the right people that could help me do the thing, and learning how to delegate out, the workload. And so it took a long, long time to get to that. Dare I say, it basically took me to, meeting you guys and joining on with Zebulon before it really like clicked in for me, like, okay, this is how we put, people in the right places, and this is how we delegate. responsibilities, and starting to remove myself from the day to day, and turn it from a business that lived 100% inside my head as far as like operations, procedures, everything, and like starting to spread that knowledge out and get it down on paper so that you're creating something that ultimately, for any business owner, ultimately you want to have something that you can sell and get out of at some point. And yeah, I had realized, a few stages where it's like I couldn't sell this business because there's nothing to sell beyond, vehicles and camping gear. Yeah, all the knowledge is in here.
Mhm.
So yeah, it was. I found it really hard to have the time to stop and really kind of think about the business from a different perspective, like how to set up the business so that I wasn't responsible for everything. It was hard to find the time and the mental space to do that because I was swallowed up by everything. Um, Income, the people that will help me, make those decisions. And as we inevitably, I'm sure we get to in this conversation, is like, it's all about surrounding yourself with the right people. Like we can't, as business owners, you can't do it alone. Maybe you can in like a tech company or software business, sitting in your house and you're talented like that, but not in the outdoors, not in the business that we're in. You got to surround yourself with the right people. And that's largely what I've really been like learning to do and leaning into in the last few years.
So I'd like to hear a little bit more of this origin story, kind of between this like third year mark, right? And then basically what you just started describing was a big transformation that happened the start of a year ago. And so, we're looking at a 10-year time period in here. So your kids, you have your first child, right? You have this house. You're inundated with it and it's far beyond. And like there's this question mark of do I get out of it or not, right? Obviously you decided to stick through with it, right? And at some point in this process, you brought on Scott, your manager, right? And so tell us a little bit of the kind of that, that decision making, right? Between you had your first kid, things started feeling real. You now have weight. You're not just a young kid anymore that can kind of go out and do this, have fun. You have responsibilities. You want to be a present father with that child, right? You also want to make sure that it's sustaining you and your family as well. So, kind of fill us in a little bit of that bridge in between kind of the personal growth that you had, one being the key provider in your family, and then how that evolved into the middle growth, as I like to call it, where you started surrounding yourself with like a really solid ops manager, an office assistant, basically your right-hand man, Scott.
Yeah. Um, in a lot of ways, some of it comes down to how I've always run the business. And it was this perspective that, largely what we do, what was a huge part of what we do was guided backpacking trips. Taking people into kind of more remote places, doing things that they really sort of need a guide for, like they're entering into a place that they're uncomfortable with. And it was so important to me and such a huge value that Four Seasons brought to our guests that they were on the phone or communicating via email with somebody who was a guide, like knows the product inside and out, can answer all the questions, really like knows everything about it. And our guests would say it to us all the time. They report back to me after a trip, the level of like customer service and support and the trust that they developed, along that whole kind of booking journey and pre-trip journey, how valuable that was to them. And I mean, I guess I knew it inside anyway. But to hear it back from them, further instilled like this is like a huge part of our value proposition. And so it made it very challenging for me. I was very resistant to bringing in someone else into the business to be that right hand, um, that wasn't cut from the same cloth, in a sense.
Mm.
And granted, I recognize that there can be folly in that as well. It was something I always wrestled with. I want someone from the inside to move into that role with me, someone that led the trips, knows everything, that can do it, can communicate with our guests in the same way that I've been able to communicate to maintain that level of customer service and maintain that level of trust that I consider to be so kind of fundamental to what we offer. Um, so, I wasn't going to pull in somebody off the street. And honestly, I'd never done I'd never posted a job position online anyway. I didn't really know how to do it. I didn't want to do it. I wanted somebody that I knew and trusted right there, with me. So as is, largely part of the progression in the guiding world, like you're gonna age out of the guiding side of things, especially like backpack guiding, carrying heavy packs in and out of places like Grand Canyon. You're going to age out. And so here was Scott, someone that had been with the company actually longer than I had, who was also moving into that next phase of life. Now he's got the family and he needs to be around more. And so it was like, thank God, like you just showed up and you showed up kind of at the right time, maybe kind of at the wrong time, because he stepped into the office literally like January 2020.
Okay.
So boom, COVID right around
Great
the
timing.
corner.
Yeah.
So thankfully I had someone to go through this, kind of monumental, business impact that we all experienced in one way or another. I had someone to go through that with me. But, once I brought him in, got him trained up, um, you know, it's it took a while. And part of that is because of my style. I was used to doing everything. As you guys have come to learn about me, like I'm very like I'm a task guy. I love to have a list. I love to cross stuff off and get the job done. I get great personal satisfaction out of like achieving, tasks, getting it done. And so it took a long time for me to feel, okay, Scott's got this. And for me to have that trust to then like step back and like, you got this. I don't need to be involved in every little piece of it. You get to do it the way that you do it. Um, and I'm going to be okay with that. As long as the result is the positive result that we're shooting for, it doesn't matter really how you get there. And I'm continuing to see that more and more. I mean, it's actually like paying off huge dividends right now, but as we've brought more people into sort of management positions, but to have that experience of like bringing in somebody, you know, getting them trained up, trusting in them to do the thing, and then being able to step away from that and like, I used to have to do all of that, and now I don't have to do that. It gets done, and I don't have to think about it. Is like hugely gratifying, and a great relief. And yeah, it's been a number of years, and only now. So that was 2020. Here we are, 6 years later. We've just kind of brought in who I would consider to be two new management members, of our team in Steve and Eddy, and getting them situated and defining their roles. Another huge, huge process for us. Um, and watching them run with it is just like it feels really good.
So right now, like you yourself, and you just started to acknowledge this, like you guys just leveled up for another level of scaling, right? So,
Yeah.
um, the bringing in Scott again, 6 years ago at this point was a big step for you personally. It was a big personal growth year, right? You just had to get everything regurgitated out of what was in your mind and into the hands of somebody else, okay? And so you guys navigated that well, but you also had a lot of growth in that time period where both of you guys were starting to feel the pressures of being like, wow. this is growing up more than just we were, more than just the two of us, right? And that was right around that time where we started working with you guys. You sat in on a session at America Outdoors. You reached out. I think that was, one of the economic kind of ones, and you knew that there was an element of profitability that you wanted to work on, pricing, but also we ended up engaging within the Eddy, right? And so, kind of talking about this personal growth kind of stuff and kind of that scale. At the beginning of this, you mentioned some key phrases we talk about: responsibility, accountability, the RACI charting. And so, even after you guys being with each other for 5, 6 years, there were some components that we worked through within the curriculum that you started adopting, right? So before I kind of start getting too much into the weeds, like, from your guys' perspective from a team, being a member of the Eddy and going through some of the financial, kind of consulting work earlier on, what was your placement there? And what was your guys' journey attacking both fronts at the same time? Like, what was it that you two collaboratively were going through, the things you worked through? And again, we are going to get to where you're at today and where you guys are headed, because I think that's just awesome. But I want to hear about those earlier phases, those first 3 months of just drinking from the fire hose, if you would, with Zebulon. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a lot. It was overwhelming. It was like we're making, and I said this to Scott, when we signed on with you guys. It's like I'm looking at this as like this is my business education.
Mhm.
Like most people would go to school for something like this. I'm already in the business. I know plenty about it. This is an investment, but it's an educational investment that will, undoubtedly pay dividends down the road. And so yeah, it was kind of like it was jumping into school, and now it's like we need to read a lot. We've got homework to do. We've got meetings to sit in. There's a lot of time and effort being invested into this, and at the same time, there's still the business to run.
Mhm.
We were seeing, at least to a certain degree, we were seeing, increased, if not increased bookings, at least increased engagement with the company. And so like the workload was a lot. We've got everything happening within the business as it's starting to grow, and all of this other work that we have now jumped into and need to make best use of. And it was really challenging. Um, but I think both of us entered it with this mindset of like we're investing in ourselves as individuals, as learning about business, about being we didn't realize this, but becoming better people, becoming better leaders, and developing a better business. And so, despite all of that, extra workload and extra time, like we were in it. Our mindset was there. We were ready for it, and I think that's a huge part of it. Like, there's plenty of business owners who I think are kind of out there, sort of perhaps floundering and maybe feeling like a certain sense of imposter syndrome. But you at a certain point, maybe you just know, and we knew like this is the time. Like we need to build something that's more than just a handful of friends leading backpacking trips. Like we need to build something solid, and here's the avenue for that. At least here's the avenue that we're choosing, as our educational path. And so, we started going through it, and yeah, like you said, it was like a fire hose of information, and we jump into the Eddy, and there's these other people and businesses that have been with you guys for a lot longer, and know things, and there's lingo, and it's like kind of feeling like outsiders, and the new guys. And so it was a lot, but I think one of the huge components that you guys talk about, which is can be applicable to kind of everything is, the whole like the crawl, walk, run concept. And it's like, man, if you can really sort of understand that and just be like, look, all we need to do is crawl. Like there may be a year's worth of curriculum, that we're going to be working through, and all these, there's assignments, and there's lessons, and there's meetings, and there's collaborations. just just get something done. Pick one of the elements and focus on that and make that happen. Like this is a journey. It's going to be a multi-year journey. And here we are, yeah, a little over a year later, and like I just sent you our RACI chart the other day, which I feel like was the first like fully fledged like we did it. And it was a crawl. It was absolutely a crawl. But to now look at that and have gone through that process and have a document that helps direct our business and make our business run more effectively is like hugely rewarding. So it's like, if that's my year one, success, and we've had other successes, but I would be happy with that as a success after year one.
So
And yeah, go ahead.
on that RACI chart, right? So RACI stands for basically you define who's responsible for a particular task or series of tasks, who's going to be held accountable to it. And we also chat about usually what does that accountability look like? What are the expectations on the outcome? Who needs to be consulted and informed? And so for you last year, and as well as Scott too, we built out this RACI chart, and the two of you guys, as you were putting earlier, especially the dirty work on the business, were combined responsible and combined accountable for all of these functions. And we knew that you needed to start, both of you guys, not just you as in Dave, but you and Scott needed to start transferring over into the consulted and informed column because you had visions, you guys had growth goals, right? Already you acknowledged you're kind of aging out and there's components. And so even to have that continued touch point with guides, like there's this element where you're no longer relevant for them. So, there's pieces where we need to start moving you out. And you didn't know where to start, right? It was like, it just felt like there was so much overwhelm in you managing so much of the business, you didn't know where to start. So the RASI chart does the mind dump of what all of those responsibilities are. We articulated key roles, right, that were replicable, that had low value, were necessary, but weren't the best value for Dave. Dave, to get the best results that you needed for the vision you had, your efforts needed to be applied in some new elements. So we created those new elements for you. You became responsible and accountable there. But then we looked in your organization and said, who else can assume these roles? So it created kind of mentee, mentor, training opportunity to start growing up some individuals within the company, right? Then you got to delegate that out. But the first time, again, it was a trudge. And it was massive because you had a huge list of responsibilities and accountabilities you were doing, right? So then that was like phase one. That was last year. Then this year, you basically you did execute on a lot of that. You brought people in, you created freedoms, you created capacities for you, right? Which was a blessing in disguise, especially when your guys' lodge burned down. So it was like some unforeseen, positive and having done that RASI. But now that you're a full year later, you looked at that same RASI chart and you put in the email, we've RASI'd the blank out of this. High five to Team Zebulon, right? And within that, you now have two other managers starting potentially in international segments as well as like a new location. And so I'm sure it was a lot easier for you and Scott to go through it, but it was probably a lot easier from the employee's perspective on, well, what are those expectations? What is it that I'm going to be doing? How is it that I can be collaborative in it? And you yourself, now that you went through it, naturally it felt more like the walk, right? You no longer were crawling anymore. It was part of your system, and you guys are walking more efficiently, going through that process again. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And I can already see that, from the crawl to the walk is very challenging. And though I haven't done it yet, I can already see that from the walk to the run is going to be that much easier.
No.
Um, and so, yeah, that initial hurdle, that initial step is the really challenging part. And then once you've got your feet underneath you, no pun intended, then it's easier to hit that run phase.
Well, and now you're excited and you're empowered, right? Because you're seeing that growth of these other people who are alongside of you, right?
Yeah.
And it took you and Scott needing to crawl through something to create that opportunity to see that excitement in somebody else. So, mad props to you guys.
Thanks. Mad
Mhm.
props to you guys for helping us on the path.
You know, it's our joy. So some other surprising things that happened in this time period, right? So, um, there was that fire that I mentioned earlier, right? So even kind of precursor to the fire. So, as you guys are starting to do the RACing, as you're getting into the crawl phase with a lot of the Eddy curriculum, which is the people and the management of your business, the people orientation. We have a lot of fun. It's all about growing and developing you as leaders, as well as building structures within your people environment so you guys can start, you know, growing up, quote unquote, as a business, right? But at that same level, we're working on financials. So we go through your trip gross profitability work paper. We define, first off, we define yours and Scott's desired owner comp, right? At the end of the day, you guys now are in a different threshold where you have families. This is no longer just a play business. So it's got to be a financially sustainable thing. So we define those comps for you guys. We look at your overhead spend, we do some management tactics to that, and then we get into pricing by and gross profit by trip. There was a point where I made some suggestion prices and you about fell over. And there was doubts and there was some challenges, right? Um, Tell me about where you were at in that point, right? And you already started mentioning earlier too, rephrasing your guys' view on your value proposition, how you communicate with your customers, recognizing that value prop and putting in and attaching a value to it, right? No longer thinking about how other operators think about their business, no longer looking at what the competitive landscape is, right? But within that journey, I laid out these price points and we communicate to you what your value prop was, okay, and how that was just for it, okay? We'll get into how we monitored that and how you got over those hurdles and the confidence that was built up to stand behind that price. But let's talk about that initial just like moment.
Yeah, it was. I was highly resistant to, your suggestion of price bumps. Um, and it was, granted, it was multifaceted. One was a brand new concept for me. In fact, what led me to Zebulon. So I sat in on, one of your AO presentations in 2023, I guess it was. Um, and it was, you said something about, there are those of you out there that you price your trips based on like the competitor. Like I'm either trying to be just below them or maybe just above them or maybe right where they are. And that's the whole model, right? Which makes no sense whatsoever. And I'm sitting in my chair thinking, yep, that's me. And I don't know how to do it differently. And I need someone to help me, do it differently. And so I find myself in the Zebulon realm, which is exactly what I asked for. So when my first reaction to, raising prices was like, absolutely not. There's also this other voice that's like, this is what you asked for. Like, you showed up here because you recognized you were doing it wrong. And, here's a better suggestion. And you can do your gross profit analysis and decide your price points based on that, but also based upon the value of the service that you're providing. So like I mentioned earlier, like we've always put so much effort into, developing, this level of trust with our guests, and we'll spend the time, and we're not just going to sell you on a trip because you said you want to do it. We're going to find the right trip for you. Like we go the extra mile, and I know the competitors are not doing that. And that inevitably results in a better experience for the guest. They're on the trip that's right for them. They have the experience that they were hoping to have, or at least they were guided towards the type of experience that maybe they didn't know they were looking for. But we, with our expertise and the time that we put in to understand our guests, led them to the right trip. Most of our competitors are not willing to go to those lengths. And so there's the increased value that Four Season Guides brings to the table. And rightfully so, like, yeah, like we're providing a higher level of customer service. We're going the extra mile. Like our prices should speak to that. We should get our worth. And so it sank in. It's like, all right, let's do this. And granted, we took the crawl approach again. Like I was not ready to run into that one. I wasn't even ready to walk into it, and so we crawled into it. But we strategically focused on some of our more popular trips, our most popular trips, really. We made some pricing adjustments, and it saved our asses in 2025. Where our participant numbers were flat. I can't even remember. They might have even been a little bit down year over year from 2024. Our revenue increased, and saved us in a year that was, we had a number of headwinds that we were facing, whether it was the Grand Canyon fires, or even before that, there were trail closures and campground closures that affected our number one and number two selling products.
Mhm.
So I want to acknowledge, and I'm actually pulling up the exact numbers here in a minute. So I'll show kind of top, or we'll showcase or just disclose some of those top level kind of changes in the transformation, right? But I want to back up into, the steps that you went through. As you said, like it was kind of like this eye-opening like reality. I'm being like, oh wow, that's what we need to charge, right? You're right. Like digesting that fact of we are now a big kid business, or we envision a big kid business. We have kids to pay for. If we want to make this, the vision that we have, and if we want to create the lifestyles for Scott and I, as well as the guides that you wanted to create, we had to charge these price points. Like there was just no ifs, ands, or buts about it, right? And so there was that need component to it, right? And these were the prices that you needed to charge. And then so in that process of going through the crawl, and as you ingested more and more to it, there were some exercises that you'd gone through, right? We recognized we looked at your historical audience base. We looked at you had an incredibly loyal customer base, people recurring and showing up year over year over year again. And so we had done some disseminating and dissecting that audience base and isolated key people that we had you do phone calls with. And these were just phone calls to literally just chat with them, as we call it, pumpkin plan with them. So we had transcribed those. We had those calls recorded. We had them transcribed. We used AI to disseminate that information, and it really brought to light all of those things that you just mentioned that the customers were telling you was your value, was telling you why they continue to show up. It was telling you what were their motives for even going with you in the first place, and what were their motives for continuing with you, and why they would go with you to the end of the earth and nobody else. And it were those things that you knew, but it was so empowering to watch you just embrace and be told that, and Scott through your customers, right? They were been friends for you a long time, but it was just kind of that, that recognition that you understood, but it was, really you getting over that imposter syndrome about how strong of a caliber and a quality of a brand you were. And so, from there, that's where we started increasing those rates. We also learned the value proposition from the customer's view, which led into some new offer innovations that we came up with, right? And kind of some new expansion opportunities that you decided to go into. And so, um, as we're going through that journey, we're also making incremental price increases to those trips, right? We'll go from a trip that was like 1,100 bucks to I told you it needed to be like 1,700, for example. And you're like, there's no way we're going to increase this thing 600 bucks. That's a 50% increase. But we ratcheted it up a little bit, people accepted it. We ratcheted up a little bit, people accepted it. And we did this all across the board, right? And so we end up getting into the summer, strong, halfway through the season. Um, and so we end up getting to a point where September comes in. And so things are jiving, right? The price point's higher. You guys are generating better cash flow. The brand recognition and the innovation and the new offer and content creation we've been helping you with to get the information out there. You're hitting record volume sales, right? So price points going up, volume's going up, things are looking good. Then a fire happens. Tell us about the fire.
Yeah. So, most people heard about it at some point, but, wildfires at, North Rim of Grand Canyon, um, burned down the North Rim Lodge, which was not massively consequential to our operations, but we had a number of trips that relied on that lodge. Um, More consequentially, closed down the North Rim, which, rim to rim backpacking trips, it's like, that's our bread and butter. That's like our top selling trip. It's what brings the vast majority of people, to our door in the first place. Um, and we lost that right before peak season. So it's like, here we go again, just another like massive disruption to operations. And what are we going to do? And one of the first things that we did was we got together with you guys, and there was brainstorming, and we had ideas. We'd been through some big disruptions before, and so we had experience with like, all right, we got to send these, like, we're about to destroy your vacation, emails. Massively time consuming, stressful, and lots of back and forth with people. But so we knew kind of what to do, but to be able to have like support and a sounding board and other minds in the room to kind of help with that process is like massively helpful. And so we were grateful to be able to have the extra minds, and you guys helped us refine the messaging and make decisions about the go or no go on certain types of trips and how to handle people. And of course we took that information, infused it with our approach, and rolled it out to everyone. So we have all these people that are signed up for trips in the fall with us, and we basically reaching out being like, it's not happening.
Mhm.
And taking the time to slow down, think about how to do it, think about who are we as a company, what thinking back to like our value proposition, and thinking back to those pump and plan phone calls and what people have told us about why they come back to us. It's like the answer was pretty clear, like, here's how we move forward. And so there was it was we have terms and conditions. Every company has terms and conditions, and you lean into those terms and conditions in difficult times like these. But we also made a decision where it was like, look, we're human as well, and there's just some stuff that we weren't comfortable just like, we've got your money and we're holding on to your money, whether you like it or not, come back in 2 years and hopefully we've got that trip. And so, we approached our guests with honesty, with understanding, and gave them options and gave them, great options. And it meant that we refunded a lot of money. But the end result was that one, the the type of communication, our style of communication, our timeliness of communication. We didn't drag our feet. We immediately reached out. We had a plan. Here it is, and here are your options. Like our guests were like, they were so grateful.
Hmm.
They were so understanding. So many of them decided to move forward with altered trips with us and had amazing experiences and are coming back in 2026. Like a bunch of them already signed up. Um,
Yes.
and and for those who, we did not have a good substitute. We gave them their money back, and they're gonna be back. Like they were like
Mhm.
it was the style of communication. It was just the human to human interaction. Like it paid off huge. Yeah, that money's not sitting in the bank. We haven't taken them on trips yet, but we know they're there and they know us and they will not forget us. And when that time is right, we know that they're coming to do a trip with us. Um, but yeah, having you guys on our side, um, to help kind of work through that and strategize that and then, inevitably roll it out was super helpful.
Yeah.
Uh, and
No.
not only did it really, save us this past fall, but it's going to pay off in dividends like on down the road because as we haven't gotten to yet, but we rolled out like completely new products and had incredible success in like selling out those new products instantly. And it all comes back to, what we were just talking about. It's like how we interact with our guests and who we are and the value that we bring to our guests.
So a little bit of, kind of inside the walls, if you will, and what happened during that situation. We got that news. You got the news that the thing burnt down. You're losing 60% of your business. We increased the frequency of our contact points with you, right? It was just like, and sheerly from the sake of being like, you guys are in freak out mood. Like rather than be making decisions out of fear, let's cool our emotions a little bit and let's get intentional, right? Let's take a breath. It's going to be okay and let's make it okay. So there are some initiatives that we went through. There was the triaging of the customer base and walking key people through exactly what you layered in. There was also elements where we use it as a time to put some intentional structure in your email communication threshold, right? So Corey helped you with building out content. She helped you with building out workflow. She helped you with like building out a lot of structure, which ended up being an asset that was built internally, right? That is now also paying out in dividends later on. And then there were those new offers. And so we went through the exercise of creating new offers, thinking about what's the copy, what's the value proposition of all of that. And so now those new offers come into play. And so we came out ahead of what could have been a very tough position. And then now that was one of the effort because of that, all of those exercises, and because we built those studs, you're now in an even primer position to help scale this forward in direction, right? So my next question for you is going to be with everything that you guys are at right now, what's on your guys' horizon? Before we answer that, I'm going to disclose some of those key numbers, okay, that what ended up happening last year. So even in spite all of these changes, right, between the price changes that we talked about before, the enhancements in your email marketing communication channels, the enhancements done to your value proposition and communicating that better, even in spite of losing the main lodge and your bread and butter for the biggest part of the season, your purchase volume, and this isn't the delivery, but the purchase volume, since we're talking sales, right? In 2020, what was that? Four, you sold to 540 passengers. Okay. In 2025, you sold to 767 passengers. So in all of this, you increased your passenger count 227 passengers and 42%. Okay. Your average spend went from 1537, so 1,500 bucks in 2024 to 1877, almost 1,900 bucks this year. And as a result, 2024's sales was 830,000, and this year it was 1.4 million, right? So the combined effect, I know, the combined effect of all of that comes out to almost, it's 1,440 minus 830, 610,000 top line revenue, right? And so, yeah, there's cost structure in there, but a lot of that is price point. So a lot of that's actually falling into, the ability for you to invest in more managers and some overhead as well as the bottom line. I don't know if you've gone through this yet. You want to hear what January's numbers are of this year? Okay. Sure, Zeb, let's hear that. So your average spend now for January is up to over 2,000. You've crossed the 2,000 average spend threshold. Your volume from last year was 92 customers in sales. This year, for just the month of January, you're at 118, right? So that's a 28% increase in volume already, and from 160,000 in sales to 240. So a 50% increase in hard dollar amounts. And so this is just the starting phase of the train that you're crawling, that you talked about earlier, the crawl through the pricing, the crawl through the changes, the crawl through all of the work in the Eddy is now setting you up for great scale opportunity. Okay. So that's why I want to hear from you what's on the horizon. Like, what are Scott, what are Eddy, and the other managers that you're working through right now, primed in position to continue to grow Four Season Guides in.
Yeah, so we've set some pretty lofty goals. Mostly, and it comes down to, like you said, like we're like kind of creating a more stable foundation, whether that's you know, gross profit margins, to having the right people in the right positions and having them, doing specific tasks, divvying up the work, having everybody focused on those specific responsibilities. We've laid this foundation so that we can basically we're looking to double revenue, in 2026
Mhm.
over 2025. So
Realistically, and
yeah,
realistically manage it.
yeah. And so the areas that we've been operating in for forever, Grand Canyon, Southern Utah, um, we're not feeling the need to reinvent the wheel. Where these are trips and places that we're intimately familiar with. We've run them forever. We're good at it. It's in our wheelhouse. It's just we're going to get a bigger piece of the pie,
Mhm.
because we're a better company than the competitors. We offer a better product. We offer better customer service, and so we're rolling out, better marketing. We're improving our website and SEO, visibility, and and we've got a few other folks that we're working with as well to help us improve in those areas. But we've got individually, we'll have more bandwidth. So now we've got Eddy, who's going to be our designated operations guy, who comes to us with great operations experience already, has worked for a company much bigger than us, specifically focused on operations. And he's running with it. He's doing stuff that, it's been on our wish list for me and Scott forever, but we've just never been able to get to it because we're dealing with everything else. He's rolling with that. We've brought Steve into the office. Also, like, intimate knowledge. He's been a guide for forever. He knows our trips inside and out. He's now, in a sales position, an admin position, so he can help with that. Those low level tasks that just, eat up a lot of Scott's time, freeing Scott to work on more kind of like higher level, sales opportunities, working with other companies, forming partnerships, bringing more people into us. And I'm working on building out. I'm working kind of at the higher level, sort of overseeing, all of the SEO, all of the marketing stuff, and building out new trip opportunities. So we launched our first international trips. We started selling those in 2025. They will operate in 2026. We started with, Machu Picchu. Like literally, I think we put three departure dates on the website. They sold out instantly. We're going to run 7 trips now in 2026 because the demand was so high, and they're all sold out. We launched Tour de Mont Blanc. It's like, well, this seems to work. People want it. We launched one of those. It sold out instantly. We added a second one. It sold out. And now we're actually working on a few more opportunities in Europe. So we're going to roll out some Italian Dolomite strips in 2027. And again, we've got the structure, we've got the framework for how to do that. So it's going to be so much easier to roll those out. We've got great, operations people in Utah that are helping us build out the products, will help us operate those trips. And there's plenty of ideas for additional international, destinations. And as as was evident in our pumpkin planning conversations, when the feedback we get from our guests, like, it was the great quote that came to us when we offered the Machu Picchu trip. Somebody came back and said, "We'll go anywhere in the world with you guys."
Copy paste, put it on the website. That's
So it's like, okay, like, it's they
Message
just,
received.
yeah, they know, like, and trust us. And we're certainly not going to launch any endeavors that we wouldn't put through the due diligence that we would do with any other trip, and all aspects of how we operate. And so they trust us, and we're confident that we'll knock it out of the park on all those. But yeah, we've laid the foundation to scale in numbers. Yes, those international destinations are awesome, and it's fun for us, and it's great to offer our long-term guests something brand new. But we've laid the foundation to scale up in numbers, in Grand Canyon and in southern Utah, the places that we've operated in for years and just have failed to really capitalize on the potential customer base for that. Yeah.
One more question for you. Are you having fun?
I am. There's always going to be the days where it's not so fun. Like you'll always be in the trenches, at some point, probably during every week. But to look back at 2025 and see the challenges that we faced and the wins that we managed to pull off, and then bringing in folks like Steve, and Eddy, into management positions, into leadership roles, and just seeing them, one, be totally invested in Four Seasons and our mission, and have the wherewithal to take their responsibilities and just run with it and do excellent work is just like so rewarding. And I'm really like, I'm experiencing that reward very much in real time, and very much like within the last few months, just getting to kind of see it happen, and feel, I still have a lot on my plate. But I'm really like, my goal is to get to that point. It's like, one of the Eddy curriculum points is oh, help me out. We're building the kind of life that we want to live. We're building the business that we want to build.
Multi-vision.
The multi-vision. Thank you. And, having kind of seeing that, you know, putting it down on paper and making it real and working towards that and seeing myself, you know, a year from now, like, yeah, we can double revenue and I can have less on my plate and I can have a clearer mind and a clearer vision about, you know, what's next. And I can check in with my managers and my staff and see that things are going well and ask, you know, where we need to improve and help direct that and just, you know, be more of a leader and less of a, you know, constantly in the trenches. Like I see it, it's there.
And Dave, I want to thank you too. I mean, thank you for letting us be a part of that and be really a catalyst behind that transition, right? From where you were even at a year ago and in your business development and your growth. Yeah, you had grown up a reputable, good business, but to invite us in and to help us grow you, grow Scott as leaders, help us, trust within us to be alongside you and setting that new structure, listening and applying the curriculum from the multivision to the RACI charting to all 10 other months worth of curriculum that are incredibly impactful that we didn't have airtime today to go through and just to adopt it with tenacity and with humility and just excitement and joy, right? From my perspective, it's been awesome seeing you and Scott both grow in your roles, but also to see the fire in your heart and the fire in the business fuel again, right? When we first started, you still had passion to it, but you were definitely kind of tired. Yeah, you're tired now because again, it's just growing, but you're excited and you're empowered and you're leading other people and embracing them. So I do have to jump out to another call right now. We've actually got a lead that hopefully is going to be jumping into your journey exactly. So I'm going to peace out. Corey's going to help close it right now. But again, thank you for letting us be along your side and for trusting and being so diligent in everything that we've done with you. So thank you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, sir.
So real quick, you mentioned, Dave, that you heard us present, I think it was 2023, and then you kind of percolated, and it wasn't until the end of 2024 that we really started like boots on the ground, working together. What advice would you give to Dave of 2023 who sat in on that first presentation and probably, felt like your hair was being blown back with all the information? What piece of advice would you give to yourself who was like teetering on the edge? Should I do this? Is this worth it?
Honestly, I don't know that I need to give that person the advice because that person made the leap.
Ultimately did. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, you know, I guess it's just now I can look back and be like, you made the right decision. What I've, and going through the Eddy, working with a bunch of other people that are also in the trenches and going through, other outfitter businesses, managers, leaders who are going through all the same stuff. It's it. I know that everybody's there at some point, or everybody's been there at some point where you're a small business owner and you feel alone and
On an island.
you feel overwhelmed and you feel um I think I mentioned it earlier, but like an imposter, like who am I, up against these other companies that have been around for 30, 40, 50 years and are doing 10, 20, however millions of dollars in revenue every year, and just feeling like, who am I? I'm just some guy that used to carry a backpack through Grand Canyon and show people a great time. And that is it's dangerous thinking. It's false thinking, because all of those business leaders were the same person at some point as well, and maybe even in some respects continue to feel that way today. But like, we're all competent. Like, we if we run a great business, if we're proud of our business and we're proud of the product that we sell, and we're proud of the people that we've surrounded ourselves with that help run that business, then you are absolutely capable. And when you feel that just stuck in the trenches and that you can't do it, that you need to surround yourself with people that will help.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people think, oh, well, that means I need to hire someone. And so I'm going to go post a job for whatever, an admin person or whatever. And it doesn't necessarily mean that. It means surrounding yourself with, like the Eddy group is so valuable because you've got this cohort, you've got these people that are doing the same thing that you're doing. They're experiencing all the issues, and you can talk about those things in real time. And then you've got Zebulon injecting this curriculum, this process, this learning process into it all so that we can work through it together and we can talk about, you know, the hard parts and the easy parts, and you just need to get over this hurdle, and we can watch each other grow and learn from one another. That was hugely helpful and powerful, and it keeps your spirits up. um but and then the other side of Zebulon, the financial help, which for most of us probably in the outdoor world, right, we're not business people, we're not numbers people, we're outdoors folk. And so, yeah, we don't have those skills, but here's a team of people that have those skills. And you have, Corey, you've got the marketing expertise, and Robert's a numbers guy, and Zebulon's a strategy guy, and so you're like de facto part of the team.
Mm.
You're helping Four Seasons, be a better business. You're helping me and Scott be better leaders. And then we'll, share that with our managers and build them up. And you got to surround yourself with good people. And so, and that involves an investment. Like I said earlier, committing to sign on with you guys, it was an investment.
Yeah.
Um, but it was an investment that I was willing to make because it was the education that I needed at the time that I needed it.
Yeah. Well, from the other side, it's such a treat, and it feels like such a blessing to be able to watch and witness that growth. So hearing you say that you feel like we're part of the team, a de facto part of the team, we feel like we are too. So it's just been awesome to watch that growth this year and to see all, like, despite all those headwinds, because you had a lot, to see you guys flourishing. It's fantastic.
Yeah. And there's so much more to get better at. The whole crawl, walk, run thing. It's like we crawled in a couple aspects. There's all this other stuff, and we're excited to as we move from the crawl to the walk in this area. Now we're going to start crawling over here, and invariably building, strengthening that foundation, strengthening our skills. Just will continue to lead to bigger and better things.
Awesome. Well, that's about all we've got question-wise for you. We're so grateful that you took the time out of your, what is it, Thursday afternoon to share this with us. Is there anything else, like for the record, that you want to toss out there that we didn't cover, or any other kind of tidbits or words of wisdom before we wrap up?
I don't think so. I think we've hit a lot, and
Yeah.
my advice to anybody that's maybe watching and listening and wondering whether to do it or not, like I said, go surround yourself with good people, and here are good people. Um, you're Yeah, we're all going to have our struggles. We all feel like imposters from time to time, but we're all capable of making it happen. Um, Go forth and conquer.
And look at you, you're staring down the barrel of doubling this year, 2026 over 2025, and that's pretty spectacular too.
Yeah, yeah, it'll be amazing. We've got a long way to go, but we're well on our way.
Yeah. And we'll be right there with you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Dave.
Thanks, Corey.
Best of luck. Talk soon.
Take care.